The story begins with Yancy, a beautiful influencer who spends part of her day live streaming while testing makeup products. That morning, she rushes out of her house to attend a job interview, and on the way, she runs into Sai-Chen, a handsome millionaire and head of a cosmetics company, who suddenly drives forward, cutting her off because she was already about to cross the street without noticing a vehicle was speeding toward her. Minutes later, he arrives at his company, where he works with his best friend, who tells him that many pretty girls came to apply for the position of being his girlfriend. Yes, you heard that right. And guess who shows up for the spot? Our protagonist. As she heads up to the office, one of the applicants does something unimaginable. She stands up and shows off her beautiful body, trying to make Sai-Chen melt and hire her. She insists he look at her chest, but he resists the heat rising within him and orders his bodyguard to throw her out of the office. Then our girl arrives, and the moment their eyes meet, they're both stunned. Even though she might not seem like the best woman, he must have seen something in her, because he immediately hires her to be his girlfriend 24/7, a deal she doesn't like at all, so she decides to leave. And as if that weren't enough, that night, by a stroke of fate, they accidentally run into each other in a parking lot where she trips and grabs onto him, causing them both to fall to the ground, crashing their lips together in a forceful kiss that stirs up a mix of disgust and desire deep inside them. In the middle of it all, they're caught on a security camera, and disgusted, he pulls away from her, thinking she's some crazy fan. In response, she wipes the kiss from her lips and says, "You taste worse than a snake. You're pure poison." Their relationship is full of hate. The next morning, Yancy tells her friend that she urgently needs to find a job to pay for her mother's surgery. Suddenly, at that moment, a girl pretends a driver ran her over, but luckily our protagonist realizes it's a setup, records her, and calls her a liar. Right then, the driver and a sweet elderly woman who was in the car thank her for defending them. However, to our surprise, these women turn out to be Sai-Chen's aunt and grandmother, and that night they look at a photo of their grandson and that girl kissing in the parking lot. Unfortunately, that same night the grandmother has a mild heart attack, and she takes the opportunity to ask her grandson to stay with Jane, something he of course can't refuse. So the next day, he reaches out to the girl. However, he accidentally calls Yancy's twin sister, a spoiled girl who needs money for an emergency surgery and to pay some gangsters who are after her. Therefore, this girl immediately accepts the job, but asks her twin sister to pretend to be her in order to get the money and supposedly pay for their mother's surgery. So our protagonist has no choice but to accept. That same night, Yancy goes to Sai-Chen's house to discuss the terms. The truth is that working for him isn't just pretending to be his girlfriend. They also have to appear married, and for that, she must move into the mansion, all for the sole purpose of making the grandmother happy. And as you'd expect, our protagonist doesn't feel entirely secure about the job, but he tells her that by signing the contract, she now belongs to him, and he reveals that sometimes at night he sleepwalks and ends up kissing girls with tongue. Scared, she headed to the airport, running away from the guy. However, on the way, a car crashes into the taxi she's in, causing her to be taken to the ER. Once there, she wakes up next to the man who caused the accident. He's very worried about her, and even promises to pay the medical bills. At that moment, Sai-Chen arrives and tries to take his wife, something that annoys Boya a bit. And on the way home, Sai-Chen tells Yancy she can't be around other men since she's a married woman, and she replies, "You have no right to tell me what to do. You're not my master." At home, Sai-Chen takes a shower and Yancy puts away her things. She notices several remotes, presses them one by one, and accidentally manages to turn off the lights in the house. At that moment, she goes into the bathroom to ask Sai-Chen for help, and luckily for her, she ends up unintentionally seeing his toned muscles as he steps out of the water. When the lights come back on, she can't help but look at him again, and notices that his skin is so white and radiant it almost hurts her eyes. She starts burning up like an oven, and he wants her to touch his body. However, she stumbles backward and nearly smacks her head against the wall. How clumsy. Later that night, the couple goes to sleep. The only problem is that Yancy is forced to sleep on the couch while he watches from the bed, thinking about the girl. She's very uncomfortable, and he even saves her from falling to the floor. The next morning, our protagonist meets with Boya, who, after the accident, decides to give her a makeup box and also offers her a job promoting makeup products, something she's passionate about. She agrees without hesitation, even though it causes problems with her fake husband, who takes her to a photo studio to try on beautiful engagement outfits. At first, she refuses, but he explains that if the police ever come to their house, they'll need proof that they're in love. Their relationship has to look as real as possible. The situation is more than uncomfortable for both, because besides not getting along too well, they're forced to hug and even kiss just to have a great photo for the room. That afternoon, the aunt makes a special soup for the couple, and as a special ingredient, the grandmother adds a tea that will will make our protagonists a bit more affectionate with each other, all to get a great-grandchild. That night, the mischievous grandmother leaves the soup in their room and asks Yancy to wait for Sichen. The young woman can't hold back and drinks some of the soup, which makes her feel hot and a bit confused, as if she were drunk. And when her husband arrives, she anxiously approaches to him and starts playfully smacking his cheeks, which completely surprises him. He has no idea what's going on with her, and it seems like the heat has gone to her head because right now she's totally out of control. She won't let go of him and needs to keep touching him while he tries to resist her, but the desire to feel her skin is so strong that he accidentally ends up kissing her on the lips. The next day, she wakes up dying of embarrassment and heads to her husband's company. There, she finds a live presentation where a woman is doing a model's makeup. Our protagonist steps in, does the model's makeup, and leaves her looking gorgeous. The showcase pleases the audience and the executives, who don't hesitate to hire Yancy for upcoming projects. This, of course, would prevent her from working with Boya, and right then, Sichen arrives and gets angry seeing them together, so he takes his wife back home. However, this man has a very peculiar trait. He reveals he suffers from symmetry compulsion, an illness where he always needs to have two identical things, like two plates of food exactly the same, even though he doesn't even touch his own. Naturally, this starts to worry Yancy a little, so she suggests things he could try, but that really annoys Sichen. Then she goes to a nightclub to dance, not imagining a man will start harassing her. Luckily, Sichen shows up and with a superhero move, throws the harasser to the ground, showing his great strength. Next, he rescues his beloved and takes her back home, but he notices she has a wound on her foot from wearing high heels, so he sits on the bed and tends to her injury, and also promises to buy her more comfortable shoes. Then Boya gets a pair of high heels as a gift, so he decides to give them to the girl he likes most, and obviously that's Yancy, who falls in love with the pair at first sight. Sichen doesn't seem very pleased and takes her to the living room, where he shows her a shelf full of flat shoes from top brands so she won't hurt herself again. Then he kneels down as if she were his queen, and when he touches her feet, the electricity of his love runs through her body, reaching the deepest part of her soul. Having his mouth so close to her makes her nervous, and in truth, she likes it. So she decides to meet Boya to return his heels. But while they're talking, Boya tells our protagonist that his birthday party is in 2 days, and nothing would make him happier than seeing her there. However, that night, things get a bit tense at home because Sichen finds a beautiful doll in his room. Yancy tries to take it away, and in the scuffle, ends up breaking it. Because of this, she gets as mad as a volcano. Her screams cut deep into his soul, making him feel truly awful as he realizes his feelings for her are growing stronger. Then her friend tells her that Sichen will give an interview for the first time in years, something that had never happened. This is war, so to steal some of his audience, she decides to start a live makeup stream. Sichen walks out of his interview and can't take his eyes off her beautiful face, leaving an anonymous comment saying she's a special girl. His friend quickly realizes he's catching feelings for her. However, she heads off to Boya's birthday party, which for some reason is completely empty, turning into a date instead of a party. The guy is a genius or a psycho. But in the end, the date doesn't last long because Sichen calls his wife and asks her to come back. Once home, he gives her a little drama, saying that if his grandmother finds out she's hanging out with other men, it could cause lots of trouble. He also tells her that tomorrow they'll meet a German businessman named Mr. Lippmann, so she'll be the one to translate. This wouldn't be a problem if it weren't for the fact that the one who actually knows German is her twin sister, not her. Remember, she's pretending to be her twin sister, so she comes up with the idea of wearing an earpiece that translates German for her. But once she's there, the device breaks. Now she's in trouble because Sichen is about to find out her secret. At that moment, Boya arrives and translates the conversation himself. Turns out he really does speak German. After the meeting, he notices Yansai's earpiece exposing that she doesn't know the language, and to top it off, he calls her by her real name, which of course shocks her. Sichen immediately arrives to separate them and take his beloved away. Yancy notices he's very sick, so she tenderly takes care of him all night, promising to always be by his side. However, Sichen's body refuses to heal, even with the best medicine, and we see his temperature rising like a volcano. Burning with fever, he tells her she's his favorite nurse, and there's a spark of passion in his eyes that reveals the truth about his feelings for her. Then she takes his hand and he sleeps better with her by his side, dreaming of her. The next morning, he wakes up, gazing at the girl's beautiful face and thinks, I could marry her. Later at work, he discovers that Yancy is doing a live stream, and naturally, the viewers take the opportunity to send sweet messages to the girls, making the protagonist jealous. So at night, Sichen gives Yancy a very elegant pearl necklace to auction, and also takes the chance to invite her to the event. However, we discover she has a similar necklace called the Angel's Tear, a gift from her mother. The next morning, our protagonist goes to a photo studio where, for some strange reason, they also sell dresses. And there, Boya appears again, insisting on buying her a lovely dress. But she refuses to avoid problems with her quote-unquote husband. Even so, he ends up buying her a blue dress. And since she still won't accept it, he sends it directly to her house, and guess who sees it? Yes, Si-chen, of course. In response, he decides to buy another dress and give it to his beloved, although he tells her it was her friend who bought it. She loves the dress and likes the guy even more. Then the day of the auction arrives where they have to pretend to be a couple. To avoid getting caught, they practice affectionate gestures, but the girl feels uneasy. What if she has to kiss him in public? The thought of people seeing her kiss someone makes her die of embarrassment. Because of this, Si-chen goes to the event alone, heartbroken, where he runs into Boya, who seems to be everywhere. And Yancy finds out the dress wasn't bought by her friend, but by the protagonist. For that reason, she decides to go to the event. She does her makeup and in a matter of minutes shows up at the party quite unexpectedly. Wearing the dress, she dazzles the guests who can't take their eyes off her as she walks toward her beloved, and then the two dance happily, proving to everyone there's chemistry here. On the dance floor, their lips get closer and closer, and their hips touch, sending waves of almost unbearable heat through their bodies. They're lost in their own little world of love, surrounded by stars, seeing each other's souls through their eyes. Neither jealousy nor the judgmental looks of others can affect them, because right now, their hearts are bound together by the red threads of fate. Then, driven by jealousy, Boya starts the event, and by mistake, the necklace Yancy's mother gave her is put up for auction. At that moment, the event organizer, who turns out to be the protagonist's ex-girlfriend, steps onto the stage wearing the choker. Upon seeing it, Yancy tells Si-chen it's her mother's necklace, so to fix the mistake, he bids on it until he reaches the impressive sum of $2.8 million. Then he steps onto the stage, takes the choker off the ex-girlfriend, and immediately puts it on his beloved girl. If that isn't love, I don't know what is. Once the auction ends, the ex-girlfriend approaches Si-chen to greet him. However, he rejects her greeting and tells her that since she left years ago without saying goodbye, he's carried deep resentment in his heart and therefore asks her never to come near him again. The next morning, the ex-girlfriend arrives at Si-chen's company because from now on, she'll work for him, which doesn't make our protagonist very happy, but he still welcomes her anyway. Although in reality, the ex-girlfriend has another goal: to make the guy fall in love with her and marry her. Nevertheless, he rejects her again and tells her the only reason he's not firing her is because she'll play an important role in the department, and he firmly asks her to speak to him only when strictly necessary. The next day, Yancy brings a delicious soup to Si-chen, who is clearly moved, so they enjoy the meal until the ex-girlfriend shows up to interrupt. The fact that she's there enrages our protagonist, so she leaves immediately, leaving Si-chen alone. The grandmother reveals she hates the idea of the ex-girlfriend being there because it could break up her grandson's relationship, so she decides Yancy should work as Si-chen's assistant to strengthen their relationship and keep the other woman away. Therefore, the next day, Yancy shows up at the company by surprise, claiming she'll work 24/7, which makes her new rival very jealous and her beloved a bit happy. Our couple goes home, very shy, realizing they have feelings for each other straight from the heart. However, Boya meddles in their relationship with an evil plan and suggests they go have fun at an arcade where they enjoy various video games. But as night falls, Si-chen starts to worry about his beloved's location, and at the same time, Boya gets a call from the ex-girlfriend telling him to take Yancy to dinner at a specific restaurant, making it very clear the two are working together. After that, they go to the fancy restaurant, and within minutes, the one and only ex-girlfriend arrives, accompanied by Si-chen. How embarrassing! And they sit right next to them. The situation becomes a bit awkward for a few seconds, and Yancy decides to act as if nothing is happening, and even behaves a bit more romantically with Boya, which obviously annoys Si-chen, who mirrors her with his date. Because of this, our protagonist gets very jealous and ends up leaving the restaurant angry. Si-chen goes after her and tries to explain what happened, but she yells back, steps on his foot, and goes home while the other two stay at the restaurant. Boya tells the ex-girlfriend she should stop meddling in the couple's relationship. However, she ignores him because she's sure she'll soon win back her beloved. Back with our leads, Yancy kicks the guy out of the room, and even the grandmother tells him he deserves it for going out with the other girl. However, that night, the young woman decides to text Si-chen asking if he's awake, and he admits he's thinking about her naked, bold guy. While she cools down her heated soul, he goes to his office and the ex-girlfriend walks in pretending to feel faint, drops some pills from her pocket, spilling them all over the floor. He kneels to pick them up, and right then, Yancy walks in and finds them close skin to skin. Jealous, she approaches the guy and with a gaze as intense as the sun gives him a big kiss, savoring his masculine lips while the ex-girlfriend watches. They keep kissing fervently and the ex-girlfriend storms back to her office, furious, while Yanzi argues with the guy after the kiss, calling him a traitor. He replies, "You're the girl who makes my days brighter." But Yanzi, with the image of him and the ex-girlfriend so close still in her head, doesn't speak to him for the rest of the day. However, she ends up stopping at a small park, decorated with lights forming a cute heart, and you might wonder who set it up. Obviously Sai-chen, who appears with a bouquet of roses and apologizes for everything, something she can't refuse. After this, they sit under a canopy. Si-chen leans in slowly to kiss Yanzi, though at that moment the canopy collapses, ruining the moment. Even so, their life together improves drastically, and the grandmother and the aunt go on a trip for a few days. So Yanzi spoils him by making his favorite food, and the next day at work they share laughs and loving glances, but they keep their relationship secret from co-workers. Then the ex-girlfriend tells the girl that when she and Sai-chen were dating, they used to kiss very intensely. She tries to make her jealous, and the protagonist says that's in the past, but she can't help feeling jealous and sad just imagining them kissing, so she goes to Sai-chen's office and tells him she trusts him. Even so, she wants him to cut all ties with the ex-girlfriend. At that moment, he explains he has no relationship with her whatsoever, but he'll gladly resolve things. For that reason, he calls the ex-girlfriend to meet the next day, which makes her very happy because she thinks he's going to confess his love. He goes to a fancy restaurant to meet her, and she arrives very elegant for the occasion, wearing a dress and a watch he supposedly gave her for her 18th birthday. A detail he notices and rushes to clarify he wasn't the one who gave it to her. It was a gift from all their astronomy classmates. He also tells her he was never in love with her, but since she was the only girl in the class, he felt responsible for looking after her. This confession enrages the ex-girlfriend so much that she screams and cries uncontrollably. Meanwhile, Yanzi is on her way to work, but since it's nighttime, she takes a taxi. However, she quickly realizes the driver is taking her to an abandoned warehouse, so she gets out of the car and calls her friend, who alerts Sai-chen, and he immediately goes to find her. Back with Yanzi, she runs around trying to hide while the man chases her, until he finally finds her behind a tablecloth. Luckily, Sai-chen and his friends appear as if by magic, rescuing Yanzi and chasing the guy. Later, when they get home, the protagonist feels a bit scared by everything that happened, so Si-chen sleeps next to her in bed to give her calm and protection. And the next morning, they wake up especially close. His arm is over the girl's head and she immediately pulls away, embarrassed. He explains they didn't dance under the sheets, nor did their skins touch to spark a fire. And she feels relieved, but also disappointed because she wants to feel his body on hers even more. That night, she walks into his office and finds a box full of strange photos. And right then, Si-chen appears stunned to see her. Yanzi drops the box, scattering photos of Si-chen with another little boy across the floor. Driven by anger, he starts yelling at her and tells her to leave, and she asks if the boy in the photo was his brother. And not satisfied with that, asks if it has anything to do with his obsession with the number. With tears in his eyes, he says he had an older brother named Gunam, a very intelligent boy and heir to the business. However, one afternoon, while they were playing in the street, a car accidentally ran over Gunam, who died a few days later. Due to this terrible event, their parents decided to leave, abandoning Si-chen, which ended up making him insecure because he feels it was all his fault and everything fell apart after that. After telling this story, he throws his cake to the floor and goes to his room, while Yanzi, furious, decides to leave the house. Outside, a terrible storm begins, so Yanzi gets stuck at a bus stop, at least until Sai-chen himself, alerted by Boya, shows up to keep her company. The moment alone allows them to talk peacefully, and, to their surprise, they end up sharing a passionate kiss. The next day, after all that drama, the couple enjoys a lovely day at a beautiful restaurant where they have fun with Sito Shuo and her friend, and later spend the afternoon at a gorgeous beach like a super in love couple. However, at night, the duo returns home, and the grandmother, with a mischievous look, tells them that as punishment, they'll have to stay locked in their room. Yes, this grandmother is very naughty and absolutely wants her great-grandchild. But Yanzi locks herself in her room and comes up with a plan. She sneaks out the window to a nightclub where she talks to her friend about the boy she likes. Boya is there too. Unfortunately, she doesn't notice he's following her, and not with the best intentions. He seizes the moment when her friend steps away for a few seconds to get close to Yanzi. Taking advantage of her drunken state, he lifts her into his arms and holds her tightly, while a photographer starts taking a series of suggestive photos. And so the next morning, Yanzi wakes up to the news that the photos have leaked all over the internet. So now everyone thinks she and Boya are in a romance, causing serious problems for the company. Faced with this, she heads to the company with her friend, but they run into a crowd of reporters who swarm them. At that moment, Boya appears and rescues Yanzi, taking her to a small restaurant where he confesses the whole thing was a plan to help the ex-girlfriend, since she once saved him when she was hit by a car. He wants to destroy Yanzi and Si-chen's relationship so the ex-girlfriend can have a chance with the guy. Upon hearing this, Yanzi throws a glass of water at him, but he grabs her arm violently, and suddenly Si-chen appears as if by magic and lands a solid punch on Boya, serves him right for being a homewrecker. After this, they go to the company to make a statement, and in front of the paparazzi explain they're a couple. It's true that we've kissed, and we love each other like crazy. She's the woman I want in my life. However, Boya shows up claiming he and Yanzi had a romantic relationship. Don't listen to this liar. I'm Yanzi's real boyfriend. But right at that moment, Si-chen has an ace up his sleeve. He also has a series of photos showing the situation from another angle, making it clear the whole thing was staged by Boya. And then the villain starts screaming nonsense until the ex-girlfriend arrives and says she orchestrated everything. As soon as she finishes, everyone swarms her, so she runs off with Boya, who unfortunately, while crossing the street with her, gets hit by a car and dies instantly. After the funeral, Yanzi focuses on her love story and shares deep French kisses with the guy that reach her very soul. But amid all the making out and promises of eternal love, she feels bad because she's still lying to the protagonist about who she is, because the real sister, now with her bandages off, has had cosmetic surgery and changed her face completely. However, the surgery was very expensive, and she owes a lot of money to a mobster who will break her legs if she doesn't pay him back. She discovers her sister is in a relationship with a millionaire, so she confronts her immediately and blackmails her. If you don't give me the money, I'll tell your beloved the truth. She begs her not to do it, saying she's finally happy and has found the love of her life. But her sister shows no mercy, claiming that beauty matters more than happiness, that's why she needs the money. Yanzi agrees to give it to her, but one day, Si-chen and the sister meet, and by accident he discovers the truth. With this revelation, he feels his heart shatter into 1,000 pieces, and she admits it's true she lied. But since meeting him, she's fallen completely in love. She doesn't care whether he's rich or not, only the intensity of his heart and his feelings. However, the CEO decides to break up with her, which is a harsh blow for the girl, and she cries for months. Then her mother appears to comfort her and convinces her to return to her hometown, far from the boy. Before leaving, she stands under his building and shouts, "I'm still madly in love with you." When he hears this, he realizes he's been selfish. When true love knocks at your door, you must welcome it, because there's nothing more beautiful than love. So he rushes to the airport, but it's already too late, because the girl has already taken the plane to her town. After this, 4 months pass with the couple separated, to the grandmother's dismay. Poor thing, she just wanted a great-grandchild to play with. Then he comes up with a plan, and as she's walking calmly down a street in her town, she suddenly sees him strolling around as if nothing happened. At that moment, she goes back home, but her mother is nowhere to be found, although she does find a letter from her saying she went for a walk on the beach. Our protagonist heads there, and to her surprise, instead of finding her mother, she finds a man shooting a few fire arrows at some drums filled with logs. The beach lights up with fire, illuminating the beautiful eyes of the two lovers. Si-chen slowly walks toward her, and with every step he takes, she grows more nervous, unsure if she'll be able to control herself in front of him. When they finally stand face to face, Si-chen tells her she's more beautiful than ever, and confesses that ever since he was a child, he's been in love with a mysterious classmate, who of course turns out to be Yanzi. He gently takes her silky hands, their touch pulling them even closer, and then leads her to a special spot on the beach, decorated with romantic lights, and a glowing sign in the background that reads, "Marry me." Si-chen appears behind her, holding a beautiful bouquet of flowers while she bursts into tears. Then, like a true prince, he kneels before her and tells her how much she has changed his life, that his greatest wish is to spend the rest of his life with her, to have children and to grow old together. He asks her to marry him, and through her tears, she nods and says yes. Si-chen slips the ring onto her finger. It fits perfectly, as if it were made just for her. They're destined to be together. Then he pulls her gently into his arms and kisses her deeply. A slow, tender kiss that grows more passionate with every heartbeat. Her tears mix with the warmth of his lips as the world fades away, leaving only the sound of the waves and the feeling that their souls have finally become one.